morning, everyone. So, we're reaching that point where I'm starting to do some basic assembly. We're getting into the finishing details of what needs to be done. And I thought I'd give you a quick example. If you remember, this is our top, and this is our rabbet that we cut for our back that's going to be installed. And I've got this little section right here that's rounded. So I've already cut the other one. And I thought I'd do one on camera, and my apologies, the camera's probably going to shake a little bit for this, and my feet are right by the tripod, just to get you up close. You have a couple different ways to do this. You can come in down from the top first, which is probably preferable. I'm just going to tap that in with a mallet. And I'm working this backwards, so bear with me. Ordinarily I come in from the other direction. I guess I should say I would stand on the other side. How's that? But for proper camera angle. I'm just tapping this with a rubber mallet. I'll probably do this by hand. Okay, we're going to go in again. We're just going to take little chunks out. There we go, I heard it. Nobody's going to see this. It's all going to be tucked in the back, so if it's not perfect, don't panic. Let's see if I can deepen this cut just a little. What does that put me? A little more. And then we just have to clean it up. And there you can probably go by hand. And there we go. We've squared that up. So now our back will fit right into there. And I've also gotten around to doing some stain tests. Let me zoom out. This one is red oak. Now, this is a kind of a scrap piece that I haven't done a whole lot of sanding to, so as you can clearly see some of the grain when you're dealing with oak, it's kind of typical of the grain in here. You'll have some that's set up higher and some of the grain comes out. You've got an option. You can put some grain filler in here. You can really do your work sanding on it. You have a couple of different options. And where this is just a scrap piece to test collars, I wasn't exactly worried. So keep in mind when you're looking at my stain collars here, this is an unsanded piece. But that one is red oak. This one, which I think is what I'm actually going to go with, is Sedona red. This one is red mahogany. And this one, which was my runner-up, is English chestnut. I love the color of English chestnut, but with those areas, because I know I'm going to have one or two, I'm not going to put grain filler in any of these, so I know I'm going to have some spots on my finished product that's going to have this long grain that's open, and I kind of didn't like the English chestnut color in that. It looks okay. I mean, if you appreciate the look of that, if you're looking for more of a solid collar like this, you're going to have to do some more work on these areas. It's just a characteristic of working with oak. And for that reason, I kind of like the Sedona red, because it doesn't have the extreme collar down in that. And it looks good without being sanded. So if it looks good without being sanded, imagine what it's going to look like being sanded. So I like that collar. That's probably the collar we're going to go with. That's Sedona Red 222 by Minwax. Next up, we're going to be cutting some more parts. I'm going to be cutting the back, and I'm going to be cutting the parts for the drawer. So I've got to get some measurements on those. And I think what I'm going to do, which is probably a bit unusual, we're going to go through we're going to get the back cut. I'm going to install that. I'm going to install the top, and we're going to complete the staining process and possibly one coat of clear coat before I even get around to doing the drawer that's going to go in the top to this. I want to make sure that I have precise measurements, and for the average woodworker, you know, the weekend woodworker, the hobbyist, well, let's say you might be a 32nd off here or 64th off there if you're out of square. So once I have the back on and I have the top on and the timbers in, then I've basically got my box set up, and I'll be able to get a very precise measurement just in case I'm off by a 64th or a 32nd or something. So that's our process that we're going to do so far. We're going to go get the back cut. Morning, YouTube. So we're set up on the back deck this morning, working outdoors. And this is the product that I was telling you guys about that I use for the backs of my furniture pieces. This is sold as a flooring underlayment in a 4x8 sheet. And as you can probably see, I've cut out tons of parts of this. This is what's left of a leftover piece. I like using this stuff because it has a very unique grain pattern to it. It's thin, so it's easy to cut and handle. And so this is what we're going to be making the back of our box out of. So this particular sheet I've had laying around I've been cutting on this for 10 years, give or take, little chunks here and there. It's not the only sheet that I've got. So I've taken some measurements. When using this stuff, you want to start with, I like to have at least one factory edge. And I brought out some measurements on here. So my measurement from bottom to top, including the top, it's got that little piece we just cut out, is going to be 15 inches and 15/16. So we're going to get a measurement on that. I just got this prop on my table saw, so bear with me. In this case, I've got two factory edges. And your factory edges may not always be square, but they are at least somewhat close. Which is a good place to start when using a full sheet of this stuff. And my measurement across 20 3/8 inches. Okay. It doesn't look it now, but there she is. Now, ordinarily, on a big sheet like this, I'd actually start by cutting things down with a circular saw. My circular saw is out on another job site, so we're going to figure this out on the table saw today. Sufficient room to do this. With the camera in the way. Sometimes that can be a challenge. I think so. All right. Okay. I'm cutting awkward pieces. You're going to run across things like that. So now we've got to put a cut up through here. And I have to decide how I'm going to do that. I might pull out my miter saw and just see how much of that I can cut to get an accurate angle. When dealing with long pieces, if all you have is a portable table saw, it gets really difficult to get an accurate and safe cut to go across this. Anyway, there's our first cut. We're going to cut this, and I'll probably use the miter saw. My camera's probably going to die before I get to that, but we'll come back when we have that done. So everyone, short segment here. We're getting ready to, I've put in a 1/8 inch round over bit. And what we're going to do next, I've also put in a starter pin just to give me a little extra stability. And in case you don't know how to use a starter pin when using a router table, free-handed with no fence, that's when a starter pin can come in handy. It doesn't have to be super tight in there either. Odds are it's not going to come out on you. But that does have, mine does have a little slot to put a screwdriver in if you needed to. So I've got a 1/8 inch round over bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in around these sides, and I'm just going to give it a little tiny rounded over lip and step. I've already run a test piece of scrap through just to make sure that it's going to fit okay, and it does. So without further ado, here we go, and I'm going to start with the inside edge because that's what I want to do first. And let me get some hearing protection going. Unfortunately, you're not going to see much of the router bit itself, but I'll show you the process. It's just like anything else. And here we go. nice little rounded edge with step. Time to do the other one. Better. Okay, so I've got to clean some of the little fuzzies and things up. But that did exactly what I wanted it to, so now we'll have a little stepped edge that's rounded. Next up, we're going to do a little bit of sanding, which I probably won't do on video. And also you guys can see, I haven't quite finished with this yet, but I took out some of this dovetail in the middle where these boards come together. I didn't want to put too much pressure in here over time. And for the weekend woodworker who does not have a jointer or a thickness planer to help take this stuff out, if you have a bit of a curve to your wood, you're limited on what you can do. If you don't have one of those, a dovetail that slides is not the best idea in the world. The only option you have if you have that kind of a problem is to use a hand plane to take some of it out. And in my case, I discovered after I had put these together, I ran one edge of these through my router to joint the edge, and then you do the other edge with the table saw. Well, I discovered afterwards that my table saw was just ever so slightly out of square. And I actually spent a good couple of hours working on my table saw to get it squared up just the way that I wanted it, because I'm kind of picky when it comes to that. So I do have an ever so slight amount of curve. I guess you would call that bow or cupping maybe. Which is one of the reasons why my dovetails came out so tight. But just as an extra safety, because of that, I decided afterwards that I was going to take out my dovetail between here and here to eliminate any pressure. Because the bottom of my bread box also has just an ever so slight amount of curve to it. I did take some of it out with a hand plane, which I didn't show you guys on video. Learning to use a hand plane is a whole different thing. But that's why you see that I've only got a dovetail in the front and back now, which will still hold just fine. And if I don't like it, I can always put a screw right up through the bottom and nobody's ever going to be the wiser. So alright, I am going to do some sanding on this. And this is relatively simple. The way that I'm going to sand this is just to take a piece. You got to do this by hand. Take a piece of sandpaper, come right around the edge until you start to get rid of all these little fuzzy edges. Try and stay with the grain if possible, as you'll save yourself more headaches later. But honestly, when you're coming around some of these curves, you just kind of have to follow it. Once we get some of that sanded down, those come off. And that'll look a little bit better. So I'm going to get that done, and when we come back we're going to start doing some stain, because I want to get that knocked out of the way. And once we have everything stained, I know I'm kind of an oddball in the fact that I like to stain things before I do assembly. There's no reason why you can't do stain before assembly, and there's no reason why you can't do it after as well. I find that I get a better finished product when I have done the stain before assembly. It just makes my life a little easier. The clear coat and the finish that we put on, or if you're doing lacquer or whatever you're going to put on it, if you're doing shellac, you can do that after. But there's no reason why you can't at least put the stain on before you do assembly. I've got complete open access. Everything's nice and neat. So I'm going to finish up some of the sanding, and when I come back, we're going to be doing stain. Thanks, everyone. Happy woodworking.